Hey guys, it's me again, SKELLZ. Today I about to speak on a very touchy topic most people are afraid to speak on. However, you are on my page and my page is all about getting us healthy. Health is not only about your body, it also involves your mind. So yes, here we go, let's speak on what is a narcissistic person, and how can you not only protect yourself but also understand what is going on in the narcissistic person's mind. That being said, I found a podcast with two lawyers that I will be including part of the conversation. We can all learn from each other. So let's start. It's important to note that dealing with narcissistic individuals can be challenging, and it's often recommended to seek professional help, such as therapy, when dealing with such personalities. However, here are 5 general strategies that may be helpful when interacting with or trying to address narcissistic behavior. 1. Set boundaries. Establish clear and firm boundaries in your interactions with the narcissistic person. Clearly communicate what behaviors are unacceptable, and be consistent in enforcing those boundaries. This may help create a more balanced and respectful dynamic. 2. Practice self-care. Dealing with a narcissistic person can be emotionally draining. It's crucial to prioritize your own well-being. Take care of your mental and physical health, engage in activities you enjoy, and surround yourself with supportive people. Now, before we continue, let's cut to the first clip from the Mel Robbins podcast that I found, which is very informational.
And here's where I want our conversation to go next. One thing that changed my life forever when it comes to narcissism is understanding the origin of narcissism in somebody, because we throw the word around and you may believe that somebody just chooses to be a narcissist. That's not what happens. And Rebecca, you decided to dig into the psychology. And what I love about how you've researched this topic is you thought about it like a lawyer. And lawyers dig into the cases, they dig into the evidence, they dig into the precedent. And you wanted to learn about the psychology of narcissism and where it begins and how it affects somebody's ability to think, how it affects their emotions, because that's critical to you being a badass in the courtroom. And so you dug into the topic of the psychology of a narcissist with the lens of, I got to know how to win. So I got to understand how somebody comes to be like this and how this impacts their emotions and their logic and their thinking, and what you discovered and how you explain it, I think is really cool. So let's go there now. When you were researching the psychology of origin, like how someone becomes narcissistic, and obviously this is a spectrum, what did you discover?
Yeah. So what I found out, and I found this to be really, really fascinating, is that it's a result of trauma. And what happens with the brain when we are exposed to trauma, we have a stress response. What happens to all of us is when we are in stress, it activates our sympathetic nervous system. So we go into fight or flight when that happens. And our brains release hormones, mostly adrenaline and cortisol when that happens. So as children, when that happens, and it happens on a regular basis or a continuous basis, it can actually cause arrested development in the limbic system part of a child's brain, in the part of the brain that is responsible for emotions, for the emotional regulation for a child. And so what happens is, as they grow, while the prefrontal cortex part of their brain can continue to develop, there can actually develop a lag between the prefrontal cortex, which is the reasoning part of the brain, the judgment part of the brain, and the emotional center part of the brain, which is the limbic system part of the brain.
This is why I wanted to have you on the Mel Robbins podcast. And maybe it's because I'm a lawyer. And so I love how you research. But I want to take a highlighter. And I want to highlight this right now for you listening. Because if you've never heard that narcissism is not something someone's born with, It is created in childhood. It is the result of repeated trauma. And what Rebecca is explaining to you, and this piece of it is critical, that the trauma during childhood, emotional neglect, physical abuse, whatever the trauma may be, it causes arrested development in the part of the brain that is responsible for someone's emotions.
Yes.
And what does that mean? That means that while their prefrontal cortex or their thinking part of the brain is like fully functioning, their emotional part of the brain is lagging. That's why somebody who has a narcissistic personality has so little emotional control. And when you start to understand, oh, wait a minute, the thinking part of the brain goes forward, but the emotional one literally stops. If you've ever dealt with somebody who's narcissistic, I bet they spin on a dime. I bet all of a sudden they can rage at you. I bet all of a sudden they're like irrational. And when I started to realize in my own brain, oh, wait a minute, this is something that a narcissistic person has no control over. This is why they're so unpredictable. This is why they're immature. This is why they can say such mean things and be like, I never said that. It has to do with the delay in the emotional development while the thinking part of the brain is proceeding. And this is really important for you to understand because this is not your fault.
Yes.
There is nothing you can do to change this. And getting yourself all wrapped around the axle because you got somebody in your life that tantrums at you like some 8-year-old. This is part of how the brain developed because of the, you heard the word again, arrested development in the limbic system. And this was critical for Rebecca to learn so that she could navigate the courtroom, so that she could be a savvy negotiator, so that she could get into the courtroom or into the deposition and win.
Wow, seems these women figured it out. As a friendly reminder, this video is for informational purposes only, so make sure you are doing your own research. Now back to our list. 3. Use I statements. When expressing your feelings or concerns, use I statements to avoid sounding accusatory. For example, say, I feel hurt when, instead of you always make me feel. This can make it more likely that the person will be open to hearing your perspective without becoming defensive. 4. Encourage empathy. Try to encourage empathy by helping the person understand the impact of their actions on others. Share your feelings and experiences in a calm and non-confrontational manner, emphasizing the emotional consequences of their behavior. Let's pause. I have here another clip already queued up that shows another perspective and signs to look for. Remember, a narcissistic person was not born this way. Like we seen in the last video, it all started from trauma.
They feel that's a reflection on them. A covert narcissist isn't like that. They don't want anybody to look at you in a positive light, which, again, usually in a relationship, when somebody looks highly at my significant other, I feel like that's a compliment to myself. But narcissists don't view it that way. They view it as competition. And so they really enjoy having you perceived as a problem, as somebody with a disorder, as somebody that's unstable, difficult to be around. Basically, they want everyone to believe that you are them, in a sense, right? They're projecting the things that they are into you and hoping that people perceive you that way. Now, the way they go about doing this is before the time you're going to be with your friends and or family, they will treat you horrible. They will insult you. They will make you feel like nothing you do is right. They will insult you and chip away at your self-esteem again and again and again as the weeks lead up to that special occasion, as you're in the car going to the other person's house or before they get to yours, right? They don't let up. By the time you show up or people show up, your nervous system is in a traumatized state. When you're in a traumatized state, you are kind of dissociated from you, and you're now in a trauma response of either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Normally, they have pushed you so far that your go-to trauma response, right? Let's say it was fawn, let's say it was flee, let's say it was freeze. They have poked you so much that the only response that you're stuck in now is fight. You're irritable. you're frustrated, you're sick and tired of how they have been treating you. And so you show up to this place in your fight trauma response, which means it's written all over your face. You're snappy. You can come across as irritable and rude because you're trying to defend yourself. You're trying to put down a boundary with somebody that has disrespected it for so long that your survival brain has kicked on and said, you can't handle it, I'm stepping in. And this is what we're going to do. Now, this isn't a conscious choice. This is your survival brain stepping in. But when we're in our survival brain, we don't have clear thinking. We don't handle things from the place of who we really are. We handle them from the place of trauma. What we don't realize, and I've done so many videos on this, is how the narcissist flips. After being so rude and unkind and really pushing your buttons, they then become this like angelic, kind, caring person. And so everyone's looking at them like, wow, they're so nice, and this person's so rude and unhappy. Poor narcissist, what they have to deal with. That's kind of what starts going through people's minds. And so there's another control and power that the narcissist gets that provides the narcissist narcissistic supply to have the control and power of people's perceptions, especially when it's based on a lie and manipulation. To be able to control that and know they're getting away with it is exactly what they want to happen.
5. Seek professional help. If the narcissistic behavior is causing significant problems in your relationships or life, consider seeking the help of a mental health professional. Therapy, particularly forms that focus on personality disorders, can provide valuable insights and strategies for dealing with narcissistic individuals. It's important to remember that changing deep-seated narcissistic traits can be difficult, and some individuals may not be receptive to change. In such cases, protecting your own well-being and, if necessary, distancing yourself from toxic relationships may be the most appropriate course of action. If you have found any of the information useful, feel free to subscribe and click this next video on how to keep your skin healthy like mine.